Just how bad is the Chinese economy? Well, let's find out in this episode. Welcome to China Insider, I'm Zhang. Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you enjoy our content and leave a like and comment below what your thoughts are on the Chinese economy. Now, in a sign to make it seem like the Chinese regime has some idea on how to bring their economy back up after failing to show good results for the first half of 2023, the CCP this week released 11 documents outlining their attempt to boost the private sector. And just a day after, 4,000 company shares went down instead of up after those documents were released. You know, they say that the stock market doesn't lie. Maybe even in China's manipulated market, they still don't lie. Well, that basically tells us that the private sector confidence in the Chinese Communist Party is at an all-time low. For months, you've been hearing how the Chinese regime is attempting to revive the economy. Well, let me tell you, it will not work. Here's why. They have a really bad consumer confidence level. People are saving up money instead of spending. And now the market shows that the private sector confidence is low too. They also face unprecedented unemployment among young people. One professor estimates that it could be close to 50% among youths. And they have a declining and aging population. The manufacturing orders from outside of China are also not coming in. With a looming recession on the horizon, China is also in a state of deflation. Because too much money printing, but not enough consumption, well, basically leads to a deflationary state. And perhaps worst of all, the banks aren't giving people money. Henan banks, if you remember, they're still not giving back the deposits of many people who have businesses. Meanwhile, those in Hong Kong, they're lining up for hours outside one of the state banks to drop money. The Chinese economy faces real problems, which were actually all created by the Chinese Communist Party in the first place. And during this time, the CCP suddenly remembered, oh wait, they have a private sector to worry about. Well, of course, after they've been cracking down on it for a few years. But right now, the CCP adopts a state over people mindset, which basically means that the state enterprises, they come first. And so it's very easy, right, to control those state-owned assets compared to private enterprises, which often require you to actually exert pressure. In China, doing business without relationships or connections, well, there's no real profitability, meaning that if you don't know somebody in, like, say, the local government, the police bureau, or a municipal office, you can't really do well or make it big enough. In other words, this whole idea of small business or the ideas of incentives and innovation, it doesn't really exist in communist China, at least not outside of the bubble that the government created. So we're already seeing a problem, right? A communist, centrally planned economy is fundamentally anti-private business. Well, everybody knows that the small business and private entrepreneurship are what makes the capital-based economy thrive. Even in communist China during the reform era in the 90s and the 80s, it saw that China grew under the economic boom when the hostility toward private enterprises were much lower. At least for a few years, that is. The opportunity to grow a private business, like, say, a factory or something to produce, was pretty profitable and it was allowed. But again, once that business becomes too big, the government took it over and then ran it into the dust. People don't perform based on abilities because they know that at the end of the day, they get the paycheck. So it lacks the vitality to make private businesses really important in China. And the idea of things like business-driven performance don't really exist either. So for whatever money was made, the state made more. And combined with the time, the global hostility toward the CCP was relatively low, well, until 1989 rolled around when the Tiananmen Square massacre happened. Of course, the CCP's relationship with the West soured then, but still domestically back then, it was still profitable for some people. But today is very different, especially following the exit of zero COVID. One of the big factors was that China became the world's factory. Foreign investments came in, and today the opposite's happening. Investments are leaving. The relationship with the West is once again bottoming out. So what exactly happened in the first half of 2023? Well, let's do some rewinding. At the beginning of the year, China suddenly scrapped its zero-COVID pandemic system. And just like that, right, no preparation on how to move their existing model of the economy, which was built on COVID testing and vaccination, back into a normal functioning economic system. So this pendulum swing is typical for the CCP. They go from one extreme to another, and just like that, there's no rationality or principle behind it. Or what is considered basically the ideas of letting things flow. It's all about security and stability for the party. So then in quarter one, they struggled, right? Putting a quarter-to-quarter growth of 2.2%. And that is, of course, from Q4 of 2022. And of course, since we know that the CCP artificially inflates all their data, the actual growth might have been zero. Still, expectations were high for Q2, 0.8%. That's what happened in Q2. So if you read the headlines, it will tell you that the GDP was way more above expectations, but reality is far from it. Here's one example. According to the new report, China's fixed asset investment went up 3.8% year on year in the first half, or H1 of 2023. The total investment stood at 24.31 trillion yuan, which is about 3.41 trillion US dollars in that period, according to the Bureau in a statement. But then if we flip back 1 year ago in 2022, the same month, July, right? It says fixed asset investment jumped 6.1% from a year earlier, which is 2021, to 27.14 trillion yuan, which is about 4.02 trillion US dollars. Something's wrong here. How did we get 3.8% growth in 2023 if they lost some 2.6 trillion yuan from 2022? The math doesn't check out, right? Oh, right, it's because the CCP fakes all their data. Also, China's youth unemployment hit a record of 21.9% in the first half of the year. And that's the cohort aged 16 to 24. So that's high school graduates and college graduates. And that's not all. A Chinese professor even published a piece outlining her calculation. She estimates that back in March of this year, unemployment rate among the 16 to 24 cohort actually hit 46.5%, almost 50% unemployment. Now, if we do some simple math, according to the UN population report, in 2015, China bolsters a 170 million youth population. So close to 50% unemployment, that would be something like 80 to 85 million ballpark unemployed. According to her research, China's manufacturing hubs of Suzhou and Kongshan in eastern China saw a big impact from the outbreak of COVID. She says, quote, employment there only recovered to 2/3 of pre-COVID levels till March. When COVID faded, young people remained the major workers in the manufacturing sector. So of course, we now get that high number. And this is all based on the fact that the CCP itself claims they do not count anybody who has worked at least 1 hour during the week. Of course, as well as those that have a social media video account, those that live in the rural areas, and those that are migrant workers. Taking away all those extra people, right, we're still getting 22%. But in actuality, probably something like 30 to 40% is very much possible. This is a great indication that there aren't enough jobs going around. Why? Because simply the private enterprise or the private sector, there's no business, so they aren't hiring. Young people make up the majority of the workforce in China. And another piece of the bad look is consumption. Since the start of the year, people have been keeping their money safe in the bank rather than putting it into the market, and consumers are just not making big purchases like a house or larger investments. And of course, this is all because people are afraid of what could come again. And that is, they saw enough terror during the 3 years of zero COVID, the draconian lockdowns, the constant COVID testing, so they're afraid that the same type of draconian oppression could actually come back. And that's really it. There's not enough consumption, not enough spending, and not enough money in China. So I say that their economy is not going to bounce back very quickly. All right, that's it for today's episode on China Insider on how the Chinese economy won't be bouncing back very quickly. And if you enjoy the content, please subscribe to our channel, comment below what your thoughts are on the Chinese economy, and like this video. And also share it with your friends if you enjoy it. All right, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.